Good afternoon, everyone. We are just commencing our latest session in the BNGAI in Practice series. My name is Hannah Williams. I'm an ecological solutions consultant here at AI Dash. Today, we're going to be running this webinar series. So I'll pass you on to Geordie, who's going to take you through what you can expect in this session. Thanks, Geordie.
Thanks, Hannah. Hello, everyone. Really good to see everyone. For those of you who joined the Field App session last time I ran, welcome back. For anyone new, I'll give you a quick intro so you know who's talking at you for the next half an hour. My name's Geordie. I'm a solutions consultant at BNGAI, similar to Hannah. My background's in ecology, history of consultancies, 3, 4 years in Australia, and moved over the UK. Good job at BNGAI, and so I've done a lot of BNG assessments in the 3 years since, doing the metrics, writing the reports, and being out on surveys, sort of refining the platform that you see in front of you now. So the position now, I sort of sit at a bit of an intersection between ecology and technology, sort of focusing on how do we improve the platform, what's working, what's annoying, what's missing, and then feeding that into the product team and then doing testing and refining it. So if you've got any feedback today, as with last time, we generally want the feedback. BNG as a whole is quite new, but so is the product. So we're definitely still shaping it as we go. And we want it to land with people who actually use it and know how what their pain points are. So a few quick things before we dive in. Yes, Hannah said, leave some comments. We'll hit them at the end. I'm going to move through things a bit fast. I'm going to go through the reporting wizard functionality, but um, that's going to cover the baseline report, the PEA report, and the full report. So yeah, if you see something, put it in the chat, and then we'll address it. Hannah's keeping an eye, and if something looks you see any features that you want added as well, that's a good way to record them there. So this, where we are right now, is the landing page. Very similar. It's the same site to the field app we did last week, except this is how it looks on the web app. So you'll recognize what we had and everything we did last session, which was quite marginal. You would see reflected on the web app. So you can see the target note we took is recorded, shows this location there. So that all sunk rapidly as we did yesterday, last session. So you can see that the timestamp about a month ago. And then this shows you a bit of an overview, but I'm sure a lot of you are probably familiar with this already. So if we want to get to the reports, we're under the baseline tab at the moment. We'll then navigate to report. Now this is a demo site we have, so we have a couple of them there. You can automatically generate whenever you want a preliminary baseline report, which will be automated completely, and it'll give you a bit of a snapshot of where the site is at whatever date that you do that. So if I touch on that really quickly, show the preliminary baseline report. It's the great use for sort of a desk study before going to the field. You get your figures already done, sort of habitat summary tables, sort of brief sections on our methodology. We have references, the legislation, the data sources we use, and then gives you a set of figures. So you can see there's no irreplaceable habitats that we've identified, limited statutory designated sites, limited designated habitats, etc. But a lot of this stuff is in the main baseline report. So I'll skip over to that as we go. So if we go here, here's one I generated earlier, which will show at the end. But if we want to go new baseline report, we'll open that up. That will bring through a bunch of data tabs that you'll need to go through. So put in your organized name, site address, reviewer, whatever you put in the map author initials will be reflected in the figures that get generated eventually. So I'll put JD for my initials. Then you have text boxes that you can edit versus text box you can't, which is more fixed text. So you can see fixed text boxes will be identified in the green. The sort of dynamic text within those is identifiable by the brackets in there. Typically, they're in capitals as well, and then that sort of function and format is reflected into the text box you can edit. So we have presented you sort of a rough structure of how we would present the report for, per subunit, sorry. So for script summary, that's the text we would put in. We'd add our project name, organization name, qualitative description, and the site gives you that scaffolding. Down here, we've just said habitat retained, enhanced, created. Again, this is completely editable if you have your own sort of proprietary text that you like to put in for anything. You can easily delete everything, type in whatever you want. You can use sort of your standard basic sort of word functionality, bold, italics, underline, do a hyperlink, you can do bullet points, you can do numbered bullet points. You can remove all formatting from text. So if you're pulling in from, say, an offline Word report, you're not bringing in any of that sort of formatting that might make the report look a bit janky compared to the rest of the text. You can also change the size if you want to create a headings. So that's a pretty good basis of how the reports flow together. That we have breaking into the sections here. So executive summary, introduction, methodology, results, conclusions, recommendations, references, legislation and policy, data sources, and appendices. You can also get help using this icon up in the top right, but it's pretty straightforward. So let's move on to the next. Every time we leave a section, the site will save it. It'll show when we've left data out that we need to fill the information in, only for fields that the wizards consider mandatory. So for the executive summary, it's stuff like the site name, the author, reviewer, authorizer, etc. So the intro paragraph, very similar formatting. See the structure we've set out, project description, project background, any legislation extra we wanted to put in, the scope of the report, and then we have this included because the demo site that we're looking at has a river going through the site. So you're asked the question, has a morph been undertaken? If we say yes, that's it, and that will show up in the report. If we hit no, but there is a river, it then gives you a chance to, do you want to include this river assessment note in the report? So say if you're ecologist who isn't morph certified, but the client wanted the survey to be done anyway and the report done just to get something into the LPA, at a baseline, probably include the river assessment note in the report. So we'll move to the next. You can also go through non-sequentially if you want. So we'll save and proceed the changes. You can see there we've got a tick because all the fields were filled out. Where or not the dynamic text was done or not, it doesn't track that, but there's nothing in that introduction field that's blocking the eventual generation of that report. The methodology section largely follows the same thing, where there is sort of differences between site to site. We give sort of differential text where, say there are non-statutory designated sites or there are. We have certain sections, particularly the survey details and like the weather conditions, where you can use the generate with AI feature. We do caveat the fact that, everything should be double checked, but it essentially takes the survey date, which will be mapped to when I last did the survey. It should be based in April. It'll then look at historical weather data to then sort of pre-populate that. And we've given it quite a tight prompt, so it doesn't, give something incredibly verbose. 28th of April, that must have been the last time I was on the site demoing this. So that's where it takes the same, the geographic location, and then gives out your humidity, sort of the wind, the weather. But again, that's all entirely editable. So if you don't like something or you recorded it to be something different, then you can go through and edit that. So methodology, just need to change it to an Android or iOS device. You can decide whether you want to include the DAFOR table in the report. That'll be generated with its own table heading. And then the survey dates, which you can put in, so that'll be a required field for this. So we'll just say it was a single day survey. Reports, very much same structure. It gets a bit more dynamic there because obviously, results, sorry. So obviously it can change by what you find on the site. We have the designated habitats inventory and the statutory designated sites for nature conservation will generate automatically a sort of table following this non-statutory designated sites for nature conservation table. as in on the map viewer. I'll quickly show you. If anyone's worked on the platform before, they're likely familiar that we also have sort of designated sites and priority habitats loaded in, and you can set your own habitat buffer. So it'll pull from that. It's very similar to the figures that I showed earlier. Non-statutory designated sites for nature conservation we don't have. So obviously that comes from lurk data, but you can then populate it as you go and then change the text. Soils is another generate with AI that uses the location that we have and then also the soilscapes data that we have on the platform, which we include with every site boundary that is sent to us. We go and procure that. So much the same format. I'll probably try and move out of the report wizard itself. I think everyone's got a pretty good idea of what it looks like. Inclusion recommendations, add in sort of signing recommendations there. Any additional, if you source anything else, you can of course edit the references or delete anything that you didn't need. Very similar with legislation and policy. We do update the references, legislation and policy and data sources every time something new comes in for data sources that we use, references if we change the text, and legislation and policy, we keep an eye on what's coming out. And data sources, we would do a refresh every 6 months as well, just to make sure we're using the most up-to-date data. Appendices will show you a representation of how it's going to be laid out. Hit save and next. Now, if I had completed the executive summary, we'd then be able to hit generate report. I had already pre-generated one with sort of dummy data here that I can walk you through, very similar to the preliminary one we looked at earlier, but way more fleshed out. Has versioning control in it based on how many iterations of the same report row you do. Auto-populates the statutory metric results summary from the metric tool, which sits sort of operating on the platform underneath this sort of map viewer. Yeah, so figures are automatically generated. Got your summary tables that have now been verified by the ground survey. Table of contents and the acronyms. You can see the reports all generated. Go through the sections. Tables have been dynamic. Table 5. We didn't have anything coming in for the priority habitat 500. I added in some non-statutory sites. Brings in the habitat tables, just individual tables. We did go through in the last webinar briefly, probably for one habitat description and species list. So at a live survey, this would hopefully be all filled out, but we should be able to see one habitat which has data we filled out on the last webinar. It's quite a large site, so I appreciate the tables quite strong. There they are. So duplicate description. So I think we did that just to showcase the last webinar, and then the species that we did with the DAFL scale. Then breaks into watercourses, your hedgerows, and the polygons. More sections that were generated, recommendations, good practice table, appendices, data sources, and you see all the figures generated automatically from the platform. So it saves a lot of time, not only on the report writing, but also on the GIS side and all the symbology. That, I'm conscious that we're 16 minutes in, so not going too heavily into the baseline report, I think I'll quickly show you where the full report and the PEA live on the platform, and then I'll give you, again, 2 ones I've pre-populated for this webinar. So I'll go through tables. Is there individual hedgerow table? I mean, habitat tables, again, similar to the one we saw in the text, broke it down into area, hedgerow, and watercourse with a bit more metadata about all of them. A lot of this is pulled straight from the metric. Condition survey is assumed for all of them because they haven't been ground verified on site like we did in the last webinar. And then you'd see once it was updated, someone had gone it, that would go from AI dash to whatever user is on the platform. So there would have been some above that would have had Geordie Daily on them, as that was the account that I ran through the last webinar on. Same thing for watercourse. We have the condition tables. You can see there's one we did go through into the condition. The rest is that sort of assumed condition, which is based on the average that we see per that habitat type in that particular area of the country. But heavily caveated by that's just sort of an estimate to give like a rough range ballpark of what the units would be, but definitely not something that you could ever submit to an LPA. So I'll keep going down. Target notes. You can see there's the one we left on the last webinar, geolocation, legend, symbology, and then we have the exact information that was included in that target note. We didn't include any photos on the webinar. If not, that would be populated there. Soil details as well. Soil strategic significance. I don't think we changed any, so that's why everything is coming through as low. Development opportunities plan, which uses sort of the distinctiveness and the condition to provide sort of a visual indication of what would be more beneficial for BNG to develop on. So you can see the develop and sealed surfaces come through as NA other for their condition. So the blue looks good. The red parts are poor condition, modified grassland, I believe. And then you can see the rivers and streams are coming out moderate. And then the distinctiveness has been labeled. Site photos, again, we didn't tag any, but they'll populate down there and then the end. So that was the baseline report. If I was to do the PEA, it's not been enabled on this site because the PEA does sit above the baseline of the full report in terms of the pricing tier. This button here would not be new BNG baseline report, but it would be new report. It would bring up a menu that would say the new preliminary baseline report, new BNG baseline report, or new PEA report. However, if we want to move to the full report, I'll show you the planning tab. I won't go into it too heavily as I believe that's the next topic on the webinar series. So next month, we'll walk you through planning on the platform. But here's one I created earlier in anticipation, webinar plan. I've already approved it as the plan for this particular site. Once that's been done, I mean, you can export the metric for it, or you can move to the reports tab. You can start a report. And as we've done the baseline report already, I can copy from the existing report. I identified mine there, or that one we just went through there, but that's devoid of data. If I hit that, it would then pull all the identical sections. So author, survey methodology, survey dates, weather conditions, soil, etc., and really sort of pre-populate a lot of that information to save you double handling and reduce the time that you would need to do the full report. Same thing is a functionality for the PEA report wizard as well. So a lot of that baseline information can be pulled straight over. So it really just expedites that process. Here's one I performed that on earlier. Webinar plan. I've got it up here. So I won't go through all the similar points again. I'll just sort of show you quickly where it differs from the baseline report. This is the PEA report. I've pulled in two PEA reports. My apologies. I don't see me pull that one in. Here we go. We'll pull it in on preview. So the descriptive summary is a bit different because now we have the information of what is post-intervention. This scenario only changed the modified grassland, I think, to another neutral and put it as medium condition. So you'll see we have post-intervention table along with the baseline. That's all automatically populated. You see the percentage gain, isolated area habitats, because that's all what I did, I think. There's the difference there. So that's the baseline plan. Again, habitat summary tables. Move my mouse, I can scroll a bit quicker through this. We brought in environmental schemes as that's an element we find that we like to look into when sort of trying to guide our post-intervention plans to see if there's anything we can tie into. We've got the good practice principles, the DEFRA principles here, local planning policy review, post-development biodiversity sort of assumption section. So it's just more fleshed out. Includes a lot of fields for any information that you would typically want to put into a post-development report. What can be counted section, proposed design, bit of a blurb on that. And then the proposed post-development area habitat detail tables, so anything that's changing will get included in there. And then I think the report apart from that is very much similar to the baselines. You can see how there's a lot that can be transferred across, which is again saving time. Slight difference in figures, but nothing massively. But just again, sort of expediting that GIS work. Um, there's obviously a post-development plan, post-development strategic significant plans. We break down the PEA plans into the enhanced plans, to the created plans, the retained plans, and then finally, one without any sort of labeling, and then one with, and then we'll quickly move to the PEA to show you the differences as well. Um, bring in tables, the species tables. These are populated via an Excel upload. So if you go to the wizard, we ask you to download a Excel table, which we've sort of automatically generated and formatted, and then you would just need to sort of splice in your work data, and any additional legislation that you want to cite in there, but it's pretty comprehensive, I would say. When you download these tables, they come pre-populated with your target notes. So when you make the target notes, I think I said last month's webinar, you can assign a tag to it. So for target note 5, I assigned a statutory designated sites for nature conservation tag, a local mixed deciduous woodland tag. So these are different. This is a different site. So that's why there's target note 2, target note 5, but essentially they display the same thing. You can add the tags to it. So then you're attaching your target notes, which typically you'd find to record where you saw evidence of a species, and then it's going to be tied in automatically to the table that you generate there. That is then our final table. And I appreciate that maybe was a lot of information, but in the interest of time and potentially any questions, that was our report wizard functionality. In a nutshell, we are expanding. So the HMMP report wizard table is being generated and developed now. And then we probably look to do some monitoring as well as BNG matures. But yeah, I'll pass to Hannah to see if there's any questions in the chat.
Thanks, Geordie. That was really good. Thanks for taking us through that. There was quite a lot of information there. I think what the burning question that is probably on everyone's mind is, Geordie, how much time is this going to save me with my reporting? What would be your general rule of thumb, do you think? How much time can be saved on some of these reports?
In my experience, the probably the biggest time sink's the baseline report, just because you're working from scratch, and that then populates the PEA in the full report. But I would say that I could, if I've done the field survey to a high standard in terms of, justification, the species list already filled out, all the tables, all the condition tables and criteria done, I would say that I could knock out a baseline report in about 2 hours using the platform, because a lot of it is pre-filled out, and the text is sort of standard boilerplate text. You just need a bit of ecological input on a couple of the sections. But yeah, big time saver considering you do it from scratch. I mean, you obviously have a template you're working off as well, but I think the it saves you a lot of time on that sort of tedious data entry, of condition scores, habitat tables. So probably that would take you maybe a day, for a report. So you're looking at about a 5 to 6 hour time saving on the BNG baseline. That probably holds pretty fair between the full report and the PEA. Um, PEA there is a bit of data entry because you've got to populate those tables. You've got to transpose the work data across to our Excel tables to put them in. We'd love to have a functionality where we could integrate that data, straight into our platform. But that's quite difficult with just due to the proprietary nature of local record centers. But I'd say you're probably looking at, again, maybe 2 hours of task and versus however long it would take you to do a PEA normally, and then the full report. Probably the same sort of order of magnitude, maybe a bit bigger, just because of how dense a full report would need to be, both on the text side and the QGIS side. So probably, yeah, maybe another day of reporting.
Brilliant. And for anyone who hasn't cut and done yet, we automate the metric too. So We've kind of automated, yeah, your figures, your metric, tables, and then it's kind of up to you then to tweak and refine and really spend that extra time that you've got from the saving that you've made on the most important parts of, or the most important messages you want to convey in that report to the local planning authority. Thanks, Jodie. That's great. I've got one here about consistency and professional standards. So, one of the known pain points in ecological reporting can be inconsistency between individuals, organizations. Um, do you think this auto generation might help raise the floor on report quality and consistency? And does it help make human review and sign off easier and more structured?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously you're gonna see different ecologists' working styles come through with the because you can edit the text box, but I think that's also, something to be desired. You don't want it to be completely homogenous, but places where I think consultancies want to keep the consistency forward and put that standard is your reporting sections, your GIS, the branding. Whereas that, yeah, that's all sort of baked into our platform. We don't have the functionality at the moment, but it's definitely been spoken. It would be easy to do that. You could switch out our sort of branding for your own consultancy branding. We do have consultancies using this functionality now. It's in the wild. It's they've gone to LPAs and been approved. So I think that there is, yeah, there definitely something to be said for, the quickness and also the consistency that you can generate these reports out that if it's you see the BNGAI sort of letterhead or the opening page, you understand the way it's going to be format and laid out.
Thank you, Geordie. I don't know if we have time. We literally have one question. It's not directly related to reporting, but if we can get to it just as the closer one, from Ranayam Savam to everyone. Is a field visit still required and or could it be totally avoided?
A field visit will still be required. Not to use the baseline, not to use the reporting wizards. You can force the wizards without a field visit, but in terms of BNG, yeah, you still need to go to site to verify the habitat. So the report wizard's good, but it won't get you over the line statutorily in front of an LPA because you'll also be able to see similar to the reports that I showed you, there'll be a lot of missing data points in those tables, which missing lacking species justification and also those sort of individual condition criteria. So it helps just help expedite the traditional BNG process, but it can't replace actual ground survey or field survey.
Brilliant. Thank you, Geordie. We are at time. We know people are busy and timekeeping is important. You'll have other meetings to go to, but we thank you so much for joining us today. We're always very interested to know your feedback, and we will be following up this webinar with a very short survey just to see what you found helpful and what you'd like to see in the future.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Really appreciate you giving us the half hour. So hope you have a good day.